Welcome everyone, it's Lori. This is Pollinator Garden Fun in upstate New York, Zone 5. And here's what's going on in my garden this week. Got a few problems going on too. In the back, this is my spice bush that I planted in the spring. No caterpillars yet, but it's probably a little too small for them anyway, so that's all right. And here's the shade bed looking lush and green. We've had a lot of rain, so a lot of slugs, but also a lot of growth from all the wonderful rain that we've had. And my giant hosta, or the hosta that ate Cleveland, as we like to call it. These have shorter bloom stalks than other hostas that I have, which is kind of nice. They don't get that long spindly look. And over here is the Japanese painted fern. I really like this fern. It's not a native plant, but it's very pretty and it does really well in this rocky spot. It's very shady and very rocky right here, and it seems to be fine with that. And my impatiens that I grew from seed this year, I had success. I was really happy with it. These do need to get fertilized. You can see the leaves are yellowing a little bit. They seem to be heavy feeders, and I may be a little lax on that at times. And I do have some potted plants here that I started in milk jugs over the winter. And they weren't quite ready to go in the ground, so I've had them potted up. But I have more cardinal flowers. And these are all done from seed. Lots of cardinal flowers here. And they'll go out in the pollinator bed later, probably in the fall. And some more turtle head. I do have turtle head in the garden bed, but these are some extras. And I also have some Bluestem goldenrod. This is a goldenrod that can take some partial shade and it doesn't get really tall, which is nice. And the squirrels do seem to like it, and the rabbits. So I have some that I put out in the garden bed and it's been getting eaten along with a lot of things. Here's a geranium, and the pots behind that are some coleus that somebody has decided to nibble on. And more critter damage from probably the bunnies, chipmunks, slugs. Now, normally with coleus, you want to cut it down so it can grow bushy. But if you look at this, the rabbits have been eating at the bottom, and they've been eating the leaves at the bottom. So I don't want to cut these stems down, because then I'm afraid that the stems would just die because there's no leaves on them. So I'm not quite sure what I'm going to do. And next year, I think there's going to be a different plan for this garden bed. You can see this one, the Black Dragon seems to be the favorite. But this garden bed right here this fall is going to get a whole renovation done on it. Most of the things are going to come out and new things are going to go in. And here's the pollinator garden. Any of you have been watching since the spring, this was completely bare ground. I dug this up and turned the soil over and turned over the turf and dug all that out and started with new plants. This is all dedicated to pollinator plants and habitat. I do have some filler plants in here, some annuals and things, just to have stuff blooming this year while I get all the perennials put in. This is the mountain mint. There's nothing on it right now because when I took this it was a little rainy and cool. And here's my common Boneset. This got way taller than I was expecting. I was thinking 3 to 4 feet, but it's probably 6 feet tall. This is a very popular plant with the pollinators. It's got some white flowers on it. I have a better shot of it on the other side that's actually blooming. And my gladiolus. Obviously gladiolus are not native, but again, this was something to give some blooms for the pollinators, and the hummingbirds love the gladiolus. These are actually quite tall. They're not hardy, so I will be digging these up. Not my favorite thing to do, and I've never actually tried to overwinter glads, so we'll see what happens. Here's some cosmos. This is supposed to be dwarf cosmos, but as you can see, it's tall. I don't know what I'm doing to make these tall. I don't fertilize, so I'm not sure what's up with that. I should probably chop them when they're young and see if that helps, but maybe I'll try that next year. But cosmos are butterfly favorites. And as you come around here to the side, here's a close-up of the Boneset blooms. These will become crawling with insects on warm days. I actually wasn't expecting it to bloom this year because I got them as bare root plants, but they seem to like this spot. And here's my parsley. There's also the dill in there and the cilantro. No black swallowtails yet. I'm not sure. I think the smoke had something to do with lateness of them, but I haven't seen any yet. And here is a false ageratum. This is like the annual one that you see oftentimes, the little floss flower with the blue flowers on it. There is a hardy version. This is a native plant. It's actually pretty big. It's bigger than I was expecting. Again, that seems to be my theme. But it has those little purple puff flowers on them like the annual flower has. Only this is hardy, I believe, to zone 4 or 5. And I'm in zone 5, so it should be good. And over here I have more annuals. I've got a few dwarf zinnias and annual salvia and more of the cosmos. This gets sun just a little bit later, so things are a little slower than the other side, which is kind of interesting. And more glads. And here's what's been happening to some of my plants. We have at least one baby bunny. I think there might be two because I think we've seen one that's a little smaller than this. But he's a little cutie patootie, but he's eating everything. And he's not afraid either. I come up to him and I get pretty close to him before he leaves. So I worry a little bit about him, but what can you do? It's nature. But he just hangs out a lot from garden bed to garden bed. I don't mind when he eats out of the lawn, that's fine. I just want him to stay away from my plants, but he sure does a number on them. And here's a bee on the bee balm, very appropriate. The bee balm's kind of on its last legs right now, but there's still plenty of nectar for them. He's just pretty happy. This is a pretty big bee too. And coming through into the back bed, this is coming in from the very back path. As you can see, there's some slate flagstone steps in there. It's a little dirty, but it's nice to be able to kind of squeeze my way through here, but as it gets full in bloom, it gets quite crowded. Everything's blooming back here, and my globe thistle is now blooming. This is definitely a favorite of the bees. It's always has bees on it. Honestly, I could stand out here and just watch them for a long period of time. And I do, honestly. And coming into the middle of this bed, here's more of the globe thistle. And here is my Joe Pye weed. I have two patches of Joe Pye weed, And I don't know if anyone remembers, I did the Chelsea chop on this back in June, where I cut off about a third of the plants. And you know, they are not blooming. I barely see any new growth from where I cut those down. And here's a stem that I didn't cut that was a little smaller and left it, and it has blooms on it. So I don't know if these are going to come back or not. Has anyone ever done the Chelsea chop on Joe Pye? So this may be a one and done experiment on that. You can see my Baptisia is enormous, and it's just flopped right over the path. And so if I turn around and look, you can see more globe thistle. Lots and lots of globe thistle. I do have to say, I have always loved the globe thistle, but when I was doing more and more studying about native plants, I found out that globe thistle's not a native. And so I'm not going to plant any more. I'm probably not going to take out what I have just because the pollinators eat it so much that I want to leave it for them. But I'm kind of sad that it's not native. I guess it's European, I believe. But it will self-seed readily, so I'll have to make sure not to let it spread anymore. And here's my other Joe Pye. Now this is the set that I did not cut down, and it is not quite fully open in blooms, but it's quite a bit farther than the other one. So we'll see what happens. And now I'm going to be taking you out to the front of the house and look at the garden beds out there. Here is one of the problems I'm having up in the front bed. These are my irises, and this year they developed rust, which is the spots that you see on there and the foliage dying. I've never had this problem before, but we had a really wet spring, and I think that's where it came from. And normally I let the foliage just die on these, and then I clean it out in the spring. But this year I definitely need to get rid of this foliage now and let some new growth happen. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut down all of the foliage on any of these that have any of the disease on them down to almost the ground. And then hopefully new sprouts will come up from that, or new shoots, and I'll have some fresh green leaves on them soon. But I will show you a picture of how the garden bed looks after that. And here are the irises all cleaned up. It's a little bare looking, but actually it's kind of neat and tidy. And this is in the front of the house. And I'm going to zoom in for some close-up pictures of this stuff. This is my Ruby Spice Clethra, and I wish you could smell this. The smell on this is absolutely phenomenal. I love this shrub. I stick my nose in it, but you do have to be careful because the bees also love it. So you have to be careful getting your face in there. But it's hard not to. You can smell it as soon as you come outside, and on a warm day, it just carries. There is a white one as well, which I actually have out in the back. There's still some bee balm on its last legs here. And this is my Margaton Lily. I love these. They're also called Turk's cap lilies, and they kind of look like little hats or little packages and presents. I've had this one for quite a while, and it actually survived the lily beetles, which surprised me. And my big hydrangea, it's the strawberry vanilla, and it's now starting to turn that blushy pink color that's so pretty. Again, this is also a big favorite of the bees. And this will continue to get more and more pink as the season goes on. And on the other side of that are my black-eyed Susans going strong. You can't kill these things. They just multiply and multiply, and they're happy and fun. They go nice with the coneflowers too. And my Cheyenne spirits doing some weird things. They're turning purple, reverting back to form, I think. But I also noticed this year I have a white one. I've never had one of those in this garden bed before. But when I went out there, and there it is. It's white. So I guess it reverted to that one. Well, that's it for this week, everybody. What's blooming in your garden? And do you have any issues you're dealing with right now? Leave me a comment and let me know. Don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe. Have a great weekend.